The sun was rising as they emerged into the open air. Clay put his arm around Carlton's shoulder, and for once Carlton didn't brush him away with a joke. Charlie nodded absently, blinking into the light. Carlton and I are taking a drive to the ER, Clay continued. Is there anyone else who needs a doctor? I'm fine, Charlie said reflectively. Jason, do you need to go to the hospital? Marla asked. No, he said. Let's see your leg, she insisted. The party stopped as Jason held his leg out for Clay to examine. Charlie felt an odd relief wash through her. Our grown up was in charge now. After a moment, Clay looked up at Jason with a serious face. I don't think we're going to have to cut it off, he said. Not just yet, Jason smiled, and Clay turned to Marla. I'll take care of him. I might have leave a scar, but that'll just make him look tough. Marla nodded and winked at Jason, who laughed. I need to change my clothes, Charlie said. It seemed like a petty thing to be worrying about, but her shirt and pants were wet with blood in some places, dry and stiff in others. It was beginning to itch. You're a mess, Carlton pointed out redundantly. Will she get a ticket if she drives like that? Charlie, are you sure you don't need to go to the hospital? Marla said, turning her laser-like concern on her friend now that her brother had been declared safe. I'm fine, Charlie said again. I just need to change my clothes. We'll stop at the motel. When they reached the cars, they split into what had become their habitable groups. Marla, Jason, and Lamar in Marla's car. Charlie, John, and Jessica in Charlie's. Charlie opened the door to the driver's side and stopped, looking back at the building. It wasn't just her. Out of the corner of her eye, she could see them all gazing at it. The empty mall was dark against the peak streaked sky, long and squat, like something bluish and slumbering. They all turned away, getting into the cars without speaking. Charlie kept her eyes on it, watching as she started her car, waiting to turn her back to it until the last possible moment. She pulled out of the lot and drove away. Along the road, the cars split off. Clay and Carlton took the other turn out of the parking lot, heading to the hospital, and Charlie turned off toward the motel while Marla continued to the Burke's house. I'll call for a shower, Jessica said as they got out of the car. Then, seeing Charlie's face, I'll make a special exception in your case. You go first. Charlie nodded. In the room, she grabbed her bag and took it into the bathroom with her, leaving John and Jessica to wait. She locked the door behind her and undressed, deliberately now looking at the gashes on her arm and leg. She didn't need to see what was there just to clean and bandage it. She got into the shower and let a quiet yelp as the stinging water hit her open cuts, but she gritted her teeth and cleaned herself, washing her hair over and over until it was rinsed clean. She got out and toweled herself dry. Dinah sat down on the edge of the tub, putting her face in her hands and closed her eyes. She was not ready to go out yet, not ready to face whatever aftermath, whatever discussion there might have to be. She wanted to continue, she wanted to walk out of this bathroom and never speak again of what happened. She rubbed her temples. She didn't have a headache, but there was a pressure inside there, something that had not yet to emerge. You can't stay here forever. Charlie still had the gauze and tape from the first time around, so she took it from her bag, wiped both wounds clean with a hotel towel, and bound up her arm and leg, using all the gauze. I probably need stitches, she thought, but it was only an idle thought. She would not do it. She got up and went to look in the mirror. There was a cut across her cheek. It had stopped bleeding, but it was ugly. She didn't know how she could cover it, but she didn't really want to for the same reason she didn't want stitches. She wanted them to heal wrong, wanted them to scar. She wanted proof displayed on her body. This happened. This was real. This is what it did to me. She dressed quickly in her jeans and her last remaining clean t-shirt and emerged from the bathroom to find Jessica and John carrying suitcases out to the car. I figured there was no point leaving stuff here, Jessica said. We're all going in the morning. We may as well bring it out to Carlton's. Charlie nodded and grabbed Jason's backpack, taking it out to the car along with her own. Carlton and his father were already back by the time they arrived. And again, they entered Carlton's living room, now almost familiar. Carlton was curled up in an armchair by the fireplace, where someone had lit a fire, and Marla and Lamar were on the couch. Jason sat right in front of the fireplace, staring in at the licking flames. Charlie sat down near him, arranging herself stiffly. John joined her, looking at her with concern, but she ignored him and he said nothing. Are you okay? Charlie asked, reaching up and rubbing Carlton's arm for a moment. He looked up at her sleepily. Yeah, it's a mild concussion, he said. I'll be fine as long as no one else tries to murder me. So, now what? Jessica asked as she took the chair beside Carlton. I mean, she paused, searching for words. What happens? She said finally. They looked at each other. It was the question they all had. What do you do after something like this? Charlie looked at Clay, who was standing in the doorway, only half in the room. Mr. Clay, what happens now? She said quietly. He looked off into the distance for a minute before answering. Well, Charlie, I'm going to go back to Freddy's. I have to get my officer, he said gravely. I won't go alone. He forced a smile, but no one joined him. What do you think should happen? He asked. He was looking at Charlie, asking her this impossible question as if she would answer it. She nodded, accepting responsibility. Nothing, she said. It's over. I want to leave it that way. Clay gave her a nod, his face impassive. She could not tell if it was the answer he was looking for, but it was all she had. The others were silent. Marla and Lamar were nodding, but Jessica looked like she wanted to protest. Jessica, what? Charlie said gently, realizing with unease that her friend wanted her permission to disagree. It just seems wrong, she said. What about everything? I mean, people should know, right? That's how it works. That guard, he murdered all those kids, and people should know. No one will believe us, Jason said without looking up. Officer Doone, Jessica said. Officer Doone, he died in there. Why would you tell his family? Why don't you tell them the truth? She looked at Clay. Officer Doone died at the hands of the same man who killed your friends. I can prove that now. A silence fell over the room. It won't bring them back, Clay said softly, but maybe it will give them some rest. Clay turned his eyes to the fire. A few minutes passed before he spoke again. You kids have been carrying Freddy's with you all these years. It's time you left it behind, he said. He was stern, but his commanding tone was reassuring. I'm going to see to that Officer Doone is given a proper burial. He paused, collecting himself as though what he said next required effort. Your friends, too, he brought his brow forward. I have a few favors to call in, but I can make this happen quietly. The last thing I want to do is disturb that place or desecrate it. Those kids need rest. The next morning, they began to go their separate ways. Marla offered to drive Lamar and Jessica to the bus station, and they said their goodbyes with hugs and promises to write. Charlie wondered if any of them meant it. Marla probably did, at least. They pulled out of the Burke's driveway. So my bus isn't until later, John said as Marla's car disappeared around a bend in the road. I wouldn't mind a few more hours in Hurricane, Charlie answered. To her surprise, she realized it was true. John flashed her a quick, almost nervous smile. Okay then, he said. Let's get out of here. Let's go somewhere. Anywhere. When they were alone in the car, John gave her a sideways glance. So, he said, are we ever going to see each other after this? He tried to say it lightly, but there was no way to lighten it. Charlie stared straight ahead. Maybe, she said. She could not look at him. It wasn't the answer he wanted. She knew that, but she could not give him what he wanted. What could she say by the way of explanation? It's not you. It's the weight we both bear. It's too much. When you are here, I can't ignore it. But something in her thoughts fell off, not quite right, as if she were speaking by rote, thinking of a script. It was like flinching instinctively to protect an injury before remembering it all healed. She finally looked at John beside her. He was staring through the windshield, his jaw set. I have somewhere I need to go, she said abruptly. Diana made a slow U turn. She had never gone to visit the place, but now, without warning, her mind was consumed by it. Aunt Janet had never suggested it. Charlie had never asked. She knew where it was, though, and now she headed there with a singular sense of purpose. I need to see. Charlie pulled to a stop in a small gravel parking lot beside a low fence of short white posts, chains swinging between them. I just need a minute, she said. John gave her a concerned look. Are you sure you want to do this? He said softly. She did not answer, just got out of the car, closing the door behind her. The graveyard before them was almost 100 years old. There were hills of lush grass and shading trees. This corner was at the edge of the cemetery. There was a small house only a few yards past the edge of the fence. The grass was trimmed neatly, but it was patchy and yellowing. The trees had been pruned too far, so the lower branches were bare, too exposed. There was a telephone pole set just inside the fence, barely on the cemetery grounds, and beside it there were two headstones, plain and small. Charlie stared at it for a long moment, not moving. She tried to conjure up the right feeling, grief and loss, so that she could mourn. Instead, she just felt a numbness. The graves were there, but the sight did not touch her. She took a deep breath and started toward them. It was such a small memory, one of those moments that meant nothing at the time. Just one day in a series of days, the same as all the others. They were together, just the two of them, and it must have been them before everything, before Fredbear's went wrong, before anyone was dead. They were sitting out back behind Fredbear's, looking out over the hills, and a crow landed and began pecking on the dirt, looking for something. There was something about its sharp, darting movements that struck her as the funniest thing she had ever seen. Charlie began to laugh, and her father looked at her. She pointed, and he turned his head, trying to see as she did, but he could not tell what she was pointing at. She could not get across to him. She did not know the words. It just as her excitement was about to turn to frustration, he saw it too. Suddenly he laughed and pointed to the crow. Charlie nodded and he met her eyes, looking at her with an expression of pure, boundless delight as if it would fill him with to bursting. Oh Charlotte, he said. About Scott Cawthon. Scott Cawthon is the author of the best-selling video game series Five Nights at Freddy's. And while he is a game designer by trade, he is first and foremost a storyteller at heart. He is a graduate of the Art Institute of Houston and lives in Texas with his wife and four sons. About Kyra Bread Wesley. Kyra Bread Wesley has been writing stories since she could first pick up a pen and has no intention of stopping. She is the author of 7 plays for Central New York Tina Theater Company, the media unit, and has developed several books with Kevin Anderson and Associates. She is a graduate of Cornell University and lives in Brooklyn, New York. And that, my friends, is the entire Silver Eyes trilogy. Definitely really took us a long time to get through this, huh? So, in about 15 days, I will be returning from my hiatus from Gacha videos. And also, if I do get a certain book that I wanted, which is number 1, Into the Pit, I will do full story live streams on that instead of trying to separate them into parts. And it'll be the last book stream I would ever do. So this is going to be the last one for now until I get Fazbear's Frights number 1 Into the Pit. All right. So hope you guys really enjoyed this journey throughout the entirety of the Silver Ice trilogy. Hope to see you guys next time with another one. If I get number 1 Into the Pit. Anyway, guys, that'll be all for the stream. Charles Boomer signing off. See you guys later.